Hello! Happy Saturday morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa Thomas from Penguin and Fish, where we make lovely and quirky hand embroidery kits. And I'm typically here every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. Central Time for about an hour. And it's a time where we relax and craft together and work on a project from beginning to end. But today is a little special. I was out last week, so I missed sewing block 5, Point Taken is the name of the block for the Splendid Sampler 2 quilt along. So here we are, Point Taken. I missed it, so I'm gonna do a little makeup day this morning here, Saturday morning. So it's a Saturday sewing session for block 5 of the Splendid Sampler 2. Hello everyone. I know it's morning for a lot of you, and I know it's late afternoon for some of you too, which is kind of in the future, I think. So that's kind of neat too. So this different time, we're usually on at 8:30 p.m. So it's only 10:30 a.m. So I think we'll see some different people in here today. So that's kind of neat. All right, and I'm gonna this might go longer than our normal hour-long thing. I might just go till we finish this or till I get super duper tired. We'll see how it goes. This is one of those blocks that I think, oh, it's gonna go super fast, but then there's actually, a lot of pressing and cutting. Those are the two things that I always forget to add in for time. Oh, it's 11:30 for you, Lydia. Oh, so you're in the future just a little bit. All right, so let's get started on Point Taken. It's by Susan Ache. I don't know if it's Ache or Achi, but A-C-H-E, Susan. Point Taken. What's kind of cute about this is that all the points of the stars are clipped off, so it's kind of an interesting little star block. There is, however, points that we're still going to have to pay attention to. All these little points here, we're going to try and match them up. And this is actually going to be kind of the first block where our scant 1/4 inch seam allowance it was going to be really important, because that's what's going to make our end piece be the 6.5 inches. So we're going to test that a little bit today, and the whole Splendid Sampler 1 was all a test of how good my seam allowances were. So I'm thinking that's how Splendid Sampler 2 is going to be. I'm always a little off, and I try and get better with each block, but this is going to be kind of the first test of, can I piece these things together and have it come out the right size? So, all right, I'm gonna flip you around. Let's get going. Welcome, everyone. Happy Saturday. All right, to the machine. So here we are, Point Taken. It is cute, cute, cute. So like I said, our first kind of pieced block. We've been doing a lot of applique and a lot of embroidery. But here we go, we get to actually piece one together. So let's start with my fabric bin, per usual. So here it's always kind of a little bit of a bear, but all right. I always, the parameters for the quilt that I'm working on is I want the backgrounds to be white whenever they can, since that's kind of a common thing, but I've never done it in a quilt before, so we're giving it a go. So I think that's going to make these white bits back here. I'm gonna leave that the white. And let's see. I like the contrast in value here. So if you squint, this red looks really dark compared to this white and compared to these other things. We can actually take our ruby ruler. I didn't put this in the product list, but this is the ruby ruler by Blair. From Wisecraft, so Wisecraft Handmade, or you can just Google the ruby ruler. But what's nice about this is you can tell the difference in value. So, you might just see, okay, this is red and green and yellow, but if you put this in front, it kind of cancels out the color. So I can see, oh wow, this is way darker than this light color, but it's a little similar to this color in the middle. So if you just want to test value, like if I really want that center to pop, I got to make sure it's contrasty compared to the colors next to it, which it is. And if I want this outer part to pop against the background, it's got to be a high contrast too. And look, it is. It's almost like really dark gray and white. So we're going to kind of look at that a little bit with mine. So my fabrics are very low contrast, like they are all very, very similar. So we got to stretch ourselves, our brains a little bit to get contrast, but I do want as contrasty as I can between the white and this dark color. So let's kind of start there, since that's going to be kind of the bulk of what we got going on here. So I want something that reads as kind of dark, and believe it or not, this yellow might be it. And a yellow star, that's kind of neat. Ooh, this reads kind of dark. We could do kind of a tan star, that would be awfully pretty too. Ooh, or polka dots. That's a little lighter. Ooh, what about a really decorative swirl? That could be pretty fancy. I don't know, I'm kind of leaning towards just this yellow. Or, you know, I still really love this patterned one. We're making some quick choices here, though. You know, I love this, but we use this a lot in our last bit. I think this is going to provide the highest contrast. So if we look at it through the Ruby ruler again, like deleting the color, you know, not as much contrast between this black, or this red and this white, but there is still some contrast there. Just a little. This might be a little bit better. Yeah, maybe this reads a little bit more dark, but I don't know. Yeah, you know what? Maybe we just go with this one just because it is, I think, a little higher contrast. All right, well, fine. We'll think about it. It's between these two, though. I'm kind of undecided yet. All right, so let's start there. And actually, these two look really pretty against each other, don't they? So I kind of like to play with proportion. I like to make the proportions the same when I'm picking colors. So there's kind of a lot of white, but there's really a lot of this darker color. And then, like, let's say I want this in it too, because those kind of look cute together. But the proportion is like a lot smaller. This could be that green color. That's kind of pretty. Oh, but you guys, you know what? This is block 5. So remember I said every 5 blocks or so I wanted to put one of our little punchy colors in, and that's from this area. So we could pick from here now for a tiny pop of color. So man, maybe I think I just want it like a spark of color. So I don't want the background to be, or this red to be the poppy color. I want maybe this green going around. That's kind of cool. So let's maybe we pull out like this blue, our first chance at that blue. This light blue is awfully pretty too. Ooh, see, now these colors are pretty together, but I wonder if it'd be even prettier with this. Oh, I think that's more fun, isn't it? That's more of like a spark of color fun. So maybe we do that. We could still have this. Maybe this is the little center color instead. So see how I'm kind of making it small just because it's kind of small proportion. That's pretty. Should we do this? I think we do this. All right, I think this is our plan. The end. I like it. Okay. So we're going with that. I try not to spend too much time picking fabrics because we did spend a lot of the time at the beginning going through our fabrics. So basically anything I pick with the quilt, it should all work together. But, you know, we still got little choices along the way. But I think this is going to be awfully cute. So, all right, let's look at this again. I'm going to just label the colors so I remember what's what. So this red is actually my yellow. I'll just put a Y there. This green is my blue, and the center is tan. So I'm going to just put a T in the middle there. And I know, I'll just do that just because, you know, for perfectionism's sake, we'll label the last thing too, even though I know that's white. But all right, so we're ready to go. So there are a few things. I was reading through this pattern, and there's a few little things that we're going to have to deal with, and that is really our half square triangles. There's a way that I want to do the half square triangles that I'll show you, but we're going to try it the way it says in the instructions too. So that'll be kind of our first part. The unique thing to me about that I haven't done before, haven't thought too much about it before, is the nesting of the seams. So typically, you know, when we're sewing squares together, like two squares like that, we can nest the seams. Like if it's this row and this row, we'll nest the seams together, and I'll show you what that means, but that will help us get like perfect points for like everything to line up. I have not thought about nesting seams at a diagonal. So that's kind of one of the things that we're going to talk about here. So we'll get to that. But first, let's get our pieces here. So let's just start at the top. 2 green print squares, which is my blue, 2 3/8, cut in half diagonally to make 4 triangles. So we're gonna do that, but one of these I'm gonna cut on that diagonal, like how she says here, but one I'm gonna leave square, because I'll show you how to do half square triangles, kind of like how I like doing it better. So we're gonna just start by, we're gonna go one piece at a time. I'm gonna start by just pressing this. Actually, this doesn't really look like it needs much pressing, does it? A fresh fat quarter here. Yeah, you know what? I am gonna just press it just a hair. Man, we hardly need any, so I'll probably just, usually I like to cut a strip and then cross cut it, but you know, we hardly need anything with these little itty bitty blocks. So I think I'm just gonna Frankenstein cut it out of there. Just meaning we're gonna have, once we get halfway through the Splendid Sampler, all of our pieces are gonna have like odd chunks out of it, but that's okay. That's how this quilt's gonna go. This isn't gonna be a perfectly pieced, cut all your strips first and then cross cut them or anything. We're gonna have Frankenstein piece out of it. Okay, so 2 3/8 inch. So let's see, 2 3/8, that's almost 2.5, right? So we need like a 5-inch piece by 2 1/8 to start out with. And you know what? I'm gonna just cut this entire selvage off because we're not gonna ever need that. Gosh, it's a little bit bigger than my mat, so I'm going to go to diagonal here. This will just get us our nice edge to get started with. We don't want that selvage in there. Okay, rotary cutter. Thanks again for joining today, guys. I know it's a little different today. Got our little Saturday day. Okay, now let's do our we'll get like 5 inches or so, maybe a little bit more, and then the 2 1/8. So actually, you know what? I'm gonna go this way. So my nice edge that I just cut is over here. Except for I only pressed up here, so we'll go up there. Okay, where is my nice ruler? 6.5-inch ruler, where are you? Here it is. Disappeared from yesterday still. I like this ruler because it has, this is my Omni-Grid ruler. I like the markings that it has on better than my Fiskars ruler. So here's this other ruler. You can see like these lines are really fat and kind of hard to read, you know, versus this one where it has like these really skinny little lines and little dots everywhere. This will help me cut a little bit more accurately, I think. Frankenstein cutting, free motion in the wild. Oh, my new terminology. Yeah, I think we came up with some new terminology last time around too. So this one also has like the 1/8 inches marked really, really well. With this quilt, we are going to need some accuracy. Oh, 2 3/8. Yeah, 2 3/8, not 5/8. You're right. Thanks, thanks, Marjorie. Man, 1, 2, 3. Gosh, I always got to remember to double check all of my measurements. So I'm going to go about 5 inches. This is about 5.5. We'll go here because then I'll cross cut the rest. So okay, I'm just lining up those lines, and then I'm lining up these other lines here to really get that 2 3/8 and about 5 inches or so. All right, man, can you tell I'm nervous? I always get so nervous on the cutting. 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. I gotta count. Okay, I think we got it. And you know what? I'm gonna just try and just trim this. This one, well, I guess we're rotating now. This side doesn't matter so much because I'm gonna trim it off. But let's at least get it square. Okay. This will be our nice first edge. All right, done with this fabric. Oh, FMQ, Gemma, it's the abbreviation for free motion quilting. And the free motion quilting is when you can quilt in all different directions all at once, like kind of like this. So like here's a sample piece. So free motion quilting where we can just go in any direction that we want by using a special foot. That's the little quilty abbreviation for that. All right, so I'm going to cross cut this to my two squares. So again, they need to be 2 inches, 2 3/4 inches. 1, 2, 3. All right, there's our first square. Oh, hello, Lucy. Yep. And you guys, I think this session, we'll just see how long we go. In theory, I'd love to finish this block today. But if it ends up being like a bajillion hours to do, then we might just stop. 1, 2, 3. I expect we'll be here at least 2 hours though. And you know, it depends on, you know, if we start cutting out and stuff, then we might just have to call it right where we're at. All right, so these are going to be used for, you can see here, it's going to be part of our half square triangles. So she has us cutting them in a diagonal right away to make 4 triangles. I'm only going to do that for 1, just because I want to show you the difference, a couple different ways of these half square triangles. So I'm going to cut 1 in half right away, and we'll leave the other one together. So I'll show you a couple different ways. So this is how it is in the instructions. So we'll do 1 in the instruction way. I'm still trying to be really accurate. In my other blocks, you could tell that I was just kind of, if I was a little off or whatever, that'd be fine. This one, since it is a little bit more about precision, I am trying to line up my edges a little bit more. But all right, so that's this piece. I'm going to set that aside now. Okay, next up. And you know what? I'm going to just check off this list as we go so I don't get confused too. That's always kind of something to do. So we, the 2 green prints, which is our blue, that is done. Okay. So now in these instructions, you'll find this in the rest of the Splendid Sampler 2, I believe, as well. So the next one is the red, which is our gold here. It says like 1 red print square, 9 inches by 9 inches, and then they're cutting that down to like 2 separate cuts. This is great if you're like putting your quilt together beforehand or something and you want to get all your pieces that you need without trimming them all perfect yet. So that's why, you know, we start with this 9 by 9 inch square that we're actually going to cut down a little further. We don't actually need to cut that. I can jump right to our actual pieces that we need to cut. So if you're confused by why do we have this 9-inch piece when we really need to cut these 2, it's just, I think it helps some people to get things easier so they can kind of prep the fabric that they need and then put the big bulk pieces away, and then they can get down to their precision cutting, I think. I think that's why instructions are like this exist. But we're going to skip that, and we're going to just get down into the actual pieces that we need. And you know what? What I should have done, we have another 2 3/8 piece. I should have layered it with our last cut, so we could have done them at the same time, but I didn't, so that's a bummer. But it looks like there's another 2-inch square down here, so we'll layer our two, like we need a 2-inch square here and here, so I'll layer those 2 fabrics together to speed things up. I should have done that for this one, but I didn't. So now we need 2 squares that are 2 3/8 inch, just like how we did with the blue. So I need more of this fabric. So I think I'll press this guy a little bit more. And I don't know, we might be able to get stuff out of this straight edge, but this is our main straight edge here. I'm probably going to cut what I need from here, and then we'll cross cut it. So we ultimately need 8 2-inch squares, so that's going to be 16 inches, right? And then we need 2 more that are 2 3/8, so that's about 5 more inches. So we're going to need like 21 inches worth of fabric, which is kind of the length of a fat quarter, but we've already cut into our fat quarter everywhere, so we might have to do a couple cuts. Maybe we'll get the 2 3/8 from, I don't know, a shorter side over here. I don't know. We'll Frankenstein the 2 3/8, and then we'll try and get that 16 out of the other side here. This is the problem when when I have all these odd cuts out of the fabric. I can't just quickly cut what I need, but I'm curious if this is 16 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, this is just 16 inches. So I'm going to save this side for when we cut those 2-inch squares. I don't want to cut in that at all. So let's get our little, we'll do that same thing that we did earlier with this side here. So I'm going to just kind of cut 5 inches worth, get a nice edge here, about 3/8 in, and about 5 inches up or so. All right, we're just going to keep it like that, and we'll rotate it. Oh, Gretchen, like for the cutting part is always the most nerve-wracking part for me. Just like, oh man, am I cutting it the right pieces and all that. So I hear ya. All right, I'm gonna worry about my 2 3/8 here and not the length so much, because I'll trim the length after. And I know this side is square, so I'm gonna we'll go this way. Man, I got nervous. 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Up, and we'll just trim this side here. All right, got a little nick out of there. This side won't matter as much because we're going to trim that off. All right, we do need this for later, so I'm going to leave that out. All right, I know that this side is my nice square side. Oh, you had to make a color guide. Oh, yeah, Lucy, I did that too. Lucy had to make a color guide. I did that too. I wrote the labels of what the pieces actually are. But yeah, I find that super duper helpful. All right, 2 3/8 again here. So I'm just trying to line up a line along the edge, and I'll line up that edge, and I know it's square. Man, I got nervous again. 1, 2, 3. Gotta count. For some people, this cutting is nothing. Those math people out there, just cut, cut, cut. It's right every time. I always freak out and have to recount. Okay, there we go. And so same way as last time, I'm going to, for the sake of just doing it how the instructions say, I'm going to cut one at the diagonal already. And then the other one, I think we're going to do a little differently. So, all right, Zoop. There we go. So we'll set those aside. And let's see, we can mark that off now. We did that. So now we have to do 8 squares out of that same color fabric that are 2 inches. But there's another thing down here with the cream, which is our white, that's also 2 inches. Oh, but we only need 4 squares of those. Okay, so we don't actually need the same amount. I'm going to cut them separately just because I already pressed that. So we'll just keep going with the same color. All right, so we need 8 squares that are 2 inches out of this. And I measured this at 16 inches, so we should have just enough for this. I'm going to trim this. There's some like little nicks out of it, so we're going to get a nice edge here. To start out, that looks all right there. Oh man, because you're left-handed, so you have a hard time reading the numbers on the rulers. Oh, they're upside down. Oh, I see. Yeah. I get freaked out that I'm like, oh, was this the 13th inch, or is this the, I don't know. I just confuse myself. I'm going to flip this whole thing around just so I can cut my 2 inches. I have a different way of so I don't have to rotate, so I can show you that later, but right now I'm going to just get my 2 inches out of here. Look how skinny this is. Every time I work on one of these blocks, it's always a surprise how small the pieces are. And these are like the biggest pieces in it almost. All right, 2 inches. Double check. Yep, 2 inches. I had to double check the instructions. All right, I'm really trying to be precise and slow. All right, done with this fabric, so we can get that out of the way. All right, I'm going to cross cut these now to the 8 squares. And what we can do to make it a lot easier is I can fold that. Let's fold this and line up those edges as best I can. This will make cutting a little faster. I could actually fold it again. I think we will. Okay, I'm going to just score this side a little bit. We'll fold it again. So I should be able to cut 2 squares out of here. This may be a little less accurate, but we're doing it. I'm going to use my more precise ruler. This will save a little bit of time, though. Okay, we're going to let's make sure we got 2 inches. Oh my gosh, we barely do. See, 2 and 2. I barely have enough fabric to do this in, but just enough. Just a tiny little edge. Then you know what? I think I'm going to rotate this whole thing so it doesn't move. And we'll get 2 inches. Ooh, maybe it's a little crooked. All right, get those out of the way, and then I have one more cut here that's barely big enough. Okay, I think there we are. There we go. Okay. I know, Gretchen, I had that rotating cutting mat. I should have got that out. But here we go. We should have our 8 pieces now. One. I just like putting them all in the same direction again. All right, there's our first 4. See, all these little piece blocks, you forget, or I forget at least, that cutting takes a while and the pressing always takes a while. So when I'm calculating in my head how long something is going to take. I always forget about these parts. All right, but we are done with all that gold color now. All right, so red print is done. 4 yellow squares. Now yellow isn't yellow, it is tan. Okay, so we just need a itty bitty bit of there. 1 1/4 inch squares. I could cut a 2 1/2 inch square and then cut them both in half, but I'm not sure if that would be as accurate. But regardless, let's give this guy a little press first. Oh, look, I have this little piece here. Maybe I'll just cut, well, I really only need 2 1/2 inches. Maybe I'll just cut a sliver out of here. Let's give it a press. That is so small, 1 1/2 inches, or 1 1/4 inches even. Okay, let's head back here. Gosh, I wonder if I could get it out of just here. I think I can. If I trim this and then trim this, I think I can get my itty bitty tiny pieces. Oh, but I do need 4. Yeah, I think I should be able to do that. So I'm going to give that just a little press there. We're really conserving fabric here now. So as long as it's 2 1/2 inches this way, I should be good. So let's, yeah, 2 1/2. So if my first cut is like here, just to trim that up. All right, I'm just gonna rotate this again. Actually, we could do it this way. So here's another way that you can measure. You can do the 2 ruler method. So, you know, I just made this nice cut, and instead of flipping all my fabric around, I can just take 1 ruler and line it up 1 1/4. That's right here. Let's double check the instructions. Yep, 1 1/4. All right, so I'm really lining up that edge. And I can take a second ruler. Let's just take this little ruby ruler that I have right here and line it up like that. 1 1/4. Just always so nervous. There we go, 1 1/4. Move that first ruler away and then trim. I'm only gonna go up to there. We'll cut that off like there. And that's the double ruler version of cutting, and that helped me so I didn't have to rotate all around. So now these 2 edges should be good, but here, let's get the rotating cutting mat out for this. So I'm gonna get this edge nice now. I'm missing something, aren't I? I need 4 of these, not just 2. So I think I messed this up. I need more of these. Yeah, I think I messed this up. I need 2 more of these, so I need 4, not just 2. So we're gonna have to cut more. Ah, boo. Oh well. Here's our first 2. Thought something seemed a little off. There, 1 1/4. Oh well. It happens, right? And 1 1/4. I think, oh, we still have all the white to cut. I'm like, oh, maybe this is at least the last thing we have to cut, but it's not. Oops, I veered a little bit on that, but we're just gonna leave it. Okay, 2. Dang, but I have to do 2 more. I was thinking we were done, but we're not. Maybe we'll just cut a chunk out here. Oops. So I think this is the edge that we just cut, I think. So this should be, actually I'm not sure how accurate that is. So we're just gonna cut a chunk out of here and we're gonna have to cut the other edge again. So we'll get a nice square edge here. And then we'll have to get our 1 1/4 and then cut it in half again. Almost done. All right. Now working on these little blocks is different, for sure different than how you'd cut a big quilt. It, yeah, all these little pieces that, you know, if this was a big quilt, we'd probably be doing a bunch of these blocks together, right? So we would be cutting a long strip and then cutting all of our little pieces all at once. Whereas this, since we're hardly using any fabric, it's a little more difficult to just do that. So cutting gets like way, way putzier for sure. But okay, now that guy's done. So all right, back at it here. We are done with that. Done with the 4 yellow, which is our tan. Okay, now we're onto the background. So same thing here. They gave us like a number, like a square to ultimately cut our pieces out of. We're going to skip that and go right to our pieces. So we need 8 squares now that are 1 1/4 by 1 1/4. So let's see, 2 squares would be 2 1/2. So 4 squares would be 5. So 8 squares would be 10 inches. So I need at least 10 inches. I'm going to just write that down. 10 inches strip for that. And for the 4 squares by 2 inches, we're going to need an 8-inch strip for that. So I just jotted that down. And we'll do that now. So let's see. Let's grab our white fabric, see what a good area to cut would be. I wonder if we just... Oh, I got a little edge over here. I don't think that's 8 inches. No, that's more like 6. Might just be better just to make a nice new edge on this. Oh, like right here, I think I can get something out of. Is that 10 inches? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, okay. So I'm gonna trim this and that will get our 1 1/4 bit, and then I need to get the 2-inch out of a different area. So let's press. Hey Tammy, yep, this will be on YouTube for sure when I'm done. So yeah, if you guys don't want to hang out today, I know it's Saturday. There's tons of other stuff to do, especially since we're going to be here for a while. So yeah, this will go up on YouTube when we're done here. I'm thinking maybe I can get some of the 2-inch bits out of there. We'll see. I think that's less than 4 inches though. So we'll start here. And since we're Frankensteining this again, we might have to go slower and do more than one thing at once. All right, so I'm gonna just cut this as a nice straight edge just to get us going. I got a little nick in here, but I don't think that's gonna matter. Okay. All right, so now this is going to be our 1 1/4 strip, which is like hardly anything. We're going to do that double ruler way of doing it, I think. 1 1/4. Actually, let's do it with this side. 1 1/4. Double check. Yep, 1 1/4. All right, so now I'm going to take a second ruler, butt it up against there. We'll scooch the first ruler away and do our strip. Okay, great. So I'm gonna do the 8 squares of this again. We'll get the rotary, cutting that up here just in case we need to turn. Oh yeah, on YouTube, that's definitely true. It's definitely nice to be able to turn around and or to hit pause and do it again. So I got a little nick out of here, so I'm overlapping it a little bit there, so I don't want that nick. So in theory, how many do we need of these again? 8. So if I fold it again, I should be able to get 2 out of here. So I'm concerned about lining up those edges. So if this is 2.5 inches, we should be good. Yep, we got enough fabric here. Great. So let's cut off that edge first. Okay, and now here's where I'm going to rotate that so I don't disturb anything. And I can still use this ruler. 1 1/4. 1 1/4. All right. I scooched these a little bit, but that's okay. 1 1/4. Okay, great. So we have our 8 little itty bitty white pieces here. Set those to the side, and now we need one more cut of fabric, but let's just check this off. These guys are done. We need 4 2-inch squares. And I was curious if we could get it out of that one little cut that we did here. So this would have to be 4 inches by 4 inches. Oh man, I think it's... Oh man, see, I'm getting putsy here. I want to try and get those 2-inch squares out of this piece here, just so I'm not wasting fabric. I have tons of white fabric, so I don't need to bother about if I'm wasting fabric or not. But there's something satisfying about finding the perfect piece that'll be like the perfect size that we need. So I need 4 2-inch bits. Oh, Joe, that's awesome! There is a little nick out of here. Do we still have 4 inches with that nick? Yeah, we do. So, all right, I'm gonna, we'll just trim past that nick. How about that? So I'm gonna cut a 2-inch piece out of here. So 2-inch strips. And then we'll cross cut it the other way just to make the edges all nice. Double check that it's 2 inches. Yep. All right, here's our first strip. Just 2 inches. Woohoo, we're puzzle piecing our fabric together though. Oh, Jean, you're from the UK, so you don't get to join live very often. Oh, so I'm excited that, we're doing this little bit different time this time because we can get a few people that don't get to watch usually in here. All right, so this is where I think it's just 4 inches. Oh, we got a little bit of leeway. Great. So I need to make those edges real nice because we didn't square up these edges. Great. Ooh, we had just 4 squares out of that little bit. That makes me happy. Satisfying to use up those extra little bits just perfectly. Okay, our first 2-inch, and then this should be just barely any cut off. Alrighty, okay. Cutting is done. That's always a good feeling. Cutting, I think, is my least favorite part of quilt making for sure. It's just so stressful for me. So here we go. We got all of our pieces here. We got these itty bitty squares and then these itty bitty squares too. Sometimes it's fun at this point to kind of lay it out like the block just to check things out. But I think we're gonna just leave it in the nice stacks here. But let's just, for the sake of it feeling good, we'll check off that last little bit. Okay, assembly, moving on. But you guys, first I gotta show you, oh, I got, look, the hubs just walked in with a latte. I'm stoked. Let's take a sip. Oh dang, that's a special like oat milk latte. He's such a nice boy. Okay, so we are going to sew an A triangle to a B triangle to make the half square triangle unit. So we're going to start out by making these half square triangles, and then we'll sew this a little bit on later. So what we need now are these, and let's shush everything else to the side. Okay, these guys we don't need yet either. So the way that it has in the instructions, remember, is it was take these squares and cut them in half, right? So this is how, this is like the most straightforward doing half square triangles, right? You cut your triangle pieces just perfect, and then you line up the diagonals, and you sew your scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, right? The problem is that when you are sewing on a diagonal, or anytime you're dealing with anything that's on a diagonal, and I mean diagonal to the grain of the fabric, so you can see that the fabric is going, you know, vertical, it's woven vertical and horizontal, right? Anytime you're on the diagonal, so now you're at the 45-degree mark of those lines, it gets really, really stretchy. So you can kind of see that, like if we take a piece of fabric here, you know, if you pull with the grain this way and with the grain that way, it's not very stretchy. But if you pull on the 45-degree angle, there you can see all of that stretch. See, we couldn't see that before if we're just horizontal and vertical, right? So the problem is that when we sew, it's going to want to stretch. So it's going to stretch, and we're going to end up with a really wonky line if we're not careful. So this looks like it may be easy, but there are extra little bits. The other thing, too, is these corners. With just an itty-bitty corner like that, it likes to sometimes get sucked up into the machine. So if you think this is going to be just super easy and you'll sew this out and it's your first time, just be aware that you might come up with some problems for that. And we're going to have a little solution for that. But we're going to try some things. So I'm going to just sew this as is, and we'll just see what happens. And then I'm going to take these next two, and I'm going to spray them with some starch and press them before sewing. So I have some Best Press starch here. And what starch will do is that might help keep it from stretching. And for the first Splendid Sampler, I use starch a lot. This time, I'm going to try and not use it so much because it totally stained my pressing, my ironing board, and I don't want to stain my mat so much, so I am going to put just a rag on top. But so this one will starch and then stitch it. And then this one, I'll show you a completely different method of doing the half square triangles here, where that's going to lead us to the exact same result. And it's going to help us relieve some of that stretching. So let's start here. So let's just start sewing this guy. Okay. So another thing we have to deal with this particular block and with all of our pieced blocks is going to be a scant 1/4 inch. So I'm going to get way in here. I think I'm gonna use the zoom here. All right, so our distance from the needle, let's see, turn this off so you can see a little bit better maybe. From the needle to our edge of the fabric needs to be a scant 1/4 inch. And what I mean by that is it's a normal 1/4 inch. So like a normal 1/4 inch, but just a hair shy of it. So it'd be like, you know, if we put our fabric up against here, it should be a hair less than that 1/4 inch. So like we're sewing on the inside of that line, basically. And why we want a hair less than a 1/4 inch is because we need to keep in mind the thickness of the fabric. So that's why it's a scant 1/4 inch. So I have this cool tool. Let me zoom out again because this is a little weird, too close. But I have this tool, and I put a link to this in the post here, but it is by Perkins Dry Goods, Celine Perkins. It's called the Perfect Piecing Seam Guide. You can get it at Perkins Dry Goods. It's $6. And look, it has a little hole in it, and then this line right here, and that should be, sorry, I'm wiggling a little bit. That should be our perfect scant 1/4 inch. So if we just, kind of curious, let's place this on another ruler. Yeah, so can you kind of see, if I get straight on, you can see it's just a hair less than a true 1/4 inch, right? That's what we're shooting for here. Just a hair less than that 1/4 inch. And then our measurements should be perfectly great if we sew perfectly, which, you know, doesn't usually happen. But, you know, it's what we're shooting for here. So I'm gonna show you guys how to use this. I kind of have my business card here already. But so, like I said, it has that little hole in there. I mean, in theory, you should do this without thread in your needle, but we're using thread. So I'm gonna set this down, and I'm gonna use the wheel on my machine to slowly lower my needle, and I'm gonna get the needle right in that hole. There we go. So now I'm pivoted on in that hole. And I'm gonna just kind of eyeball it so that line is coming straight down. If you have lines on your plate here, you can make sure that they're in line with that. So I'm parallel. And actually, I might adjust this. So here's what I do. I have just a little business card, and this helps me a lot. But I have that straight line coming down here. I'm going to butt up a business card. You can do a postcard or even Post-its or something. I like the business card because there's some thickness to it. And I'm going to butt that up right against my seam guide there and tape it down. And there we go. So now, in theory, I should have a perfect scant 1/4 inch. You know, you can actually just, you don't need a ruler like this. You could, ooh, my thread broke a little bit, I think. You could do a test. So you can take like 2 3¼ inch squares and sew it, and then when you press it open, it should be exactly that 6 inches. And if it's not exactly, then you know whether to move it. So like if your block ends up being too big, that means you're going too scant, so I'm going too far in. Like my seam allowance isn't big enough. If when you're done your block ends up too small, then you're doing too big of a seam allowance because you're eating up that fabric too much, right? So you need to get a little more scant. And you know, like I said, when I started the last Splendid Sampler, it was all over the place, and it took me a long time to get closer to a perfect size block. But here we go. So we should be all good. Now I should just be able to butt up my fabric against this business card, as long as, you know, my table doesn't move, and we should have a good scant 1/4 inches. So I'm going to get just some leaders. This is helpful to use a leader, which is just a scrap piece of fabric. Oh gosh, I'm set up for free motion quilting still. I have to change the stitch length. There we go. Now we're moving. All right, so especially when you're doing triangles, the triangle points sometimes like to get pushed down into the machine when you just have like this little bit of area that you're stitching. So if you're coming off of a leader like this, there's less of a chance for it to get sucked down because it's being held in place by this leader. So all right, let's try this first triangle. So remember, this triangle is not starched. Let's match it up a little bit better. Right sides together. Remember how I said that sewing on a diagonal like this can really stretch it out? I'm going to try my best not to stretch it out, but you might find that it keeps pulling and pulling and pulling. So I'm going to line it up against, see, I can just butt it up against my business card here. And let's just try starting. There we go. Oops, it's already moving on me. But yeah, like right here, if I hold this down and start pulling, it's going to just stretch out. Okay, so that's our first piece. You know what? I'm going to just, normally I would chain piece these all together, but we're going to just take it off so we can look at it and get the other piece started. Okay, there we are. Hold on, guys. I think we're still... Oh, no, we're zoomed all the way out. All right, so here's our first piece. You know, here's our scant 1/4 inch. I've found that I tend to get skinnier and skinnier as I sew. So you can see it's a little fatter, my seam allowance up here, than it is down here. That is something I've been trying to work on. So we'll work on it more with the Splendid Sampler here. But so you might find that you got way stretched out here. Luckily, I think we're going to trim these down, so I don't think that'll matter too much. But you know, that is the problem with sewing on a diagonal like that. But we're gonna see how it goes. Leslie Ann, I am using. Ooh, I think I'm using an 80. Is it 80-12? Those are the numbers. I always forget the double numbers. An 80-12 needle. It might be a 70-10, but I think it's an 80-12, which is maybe a little bit big for piecing, but it's just a universal, nice universal, whatever, needle. So I think we're fine with the 80-12, and I'm using 50 weight cotton thread by Aurifil. All right, so like I said, for these next pieces, I want to starch them first, and that will maybe help the help it from not stretching as much. So if you're having problems with it stretching, you might want to try this spray starch. Ugh, and I really don't want to make a mess. I don't want to get it on my mat because it might stain the mat. So I'm just gonna, oh gosh, I put a ton on there. That's a bit much maybe, but I'm gonna let them sit on there and let's give it a little press. Ooh, that didn't sizzle. I wonder if I might have to let this heat up a little bit more. I'm going to let that heat up. But yeah, so I just sprayed these. Actually, let's just make sure we get the points. So what this is doing is it's adding some starch. So that should kind of fill in the holes a little bit and make this more like a solid piece as we sew. So that should reduce the stretch. So you can see, look, this is a little wavy. That's because it's stretched a little bit because we sewed on the bias. But we'll just let it be for now. So we shouldn't have as much stretch with this one. Okay, I think that's probably hot enough. A little sizzle. So this is drying it out and just pressing it. Oh, so fun to be watching Saturday session. Yay! Oh, you finished quilting your Splendid Sampler 1 this morning. Oh my gosh, Bethany. Congrats. That is so exciting. Man, that's a huge, huge accomplishment. All right, I think we're good here. Oh yeah, look how stiff this is. It's just, It doesn't bend at all, it's just floating there. There we go. So here are our 2 starched pieces. It really is, it really does seem solid. Does starching before help you cut as well? Charlie Ann, yeah, if I would have decided to do this whole thing, I would have starched all my pieces from the beginning. You know, it was a little weird that I starched it right now. I mean, you can starch it at this point, but yeah, if you want to use starch, like if we're gonna do blocks that have so many teeny tiny pieces, those ones that you don't want any stretch or anything to happen, I would say starch your fabric beforehand. Not after you cut like this. Starch it beforehand. That would be better. I'm going to attempt to not use starch so much because, like I said, I just wrecked my old ironing board, and I don't want that to happen again. All right, so I'm going to try and get that scat 1/4 inch again. Just going to go slow. What's nice is I can butt up this bottom area against the business card here, and I should be sewing straight. All right, let's get the leader in there. And there we go. So here's our starched piece. So I don't think it's stretched as much. There is still a little bit of a wiggle there, though. That wiggle kind of indicates that it was stretching a little bit, but I don't think it's nearly as much as the unstarched piece. So still, you know, still not great though. It's still got a little bit of a wave in there. And you know, I'm getting so detailed here with this diagonal, but I'm just doing this for the sake of these couple different ways of doing it, just to show you guys, if you are sewing all these triangles and you're wondering why is it so wiggly or why are my pieces not ending up square, this might be why. But it's okay. It's all gonna be fine when we're done. All right, so this was because we're gonna trim these down, so don't worry. So all right, here's our non-starched one, our starched one. Here is the way that I'm gonna do the last piece. So this was basically a square. This is our square, right? So what I'm gonna do now instead of cutting these into triangles beforehand, like I did here, I am going to sew first and then cut later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these 2 pieces together, these 2 squares, kind of so they're like this. And now instead of cutting it first, I'm going to draw a line from one diagonal to the other. Use my little seam guide here. There we go. And what I'm going to do is sew my scant 1/4 inch first. So I'm going to sew on one side that scant 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to rotate it and then sew on the other side, and then I'm going to cut. So because I don't have this raw edge on the diagonal yet, this should help the stretch. So this should not stretch as much as these 2 did. So I think this is the best way of doing 1/4 inch, or best way of doing half square triangles, is by doing it where you draw the line and sew both sides. It's so much easier, I think, than sewing the triangles, just that diagonal edge of the triangle by itself. So here we go. Let's do this. So now I'm going to line up that scant, or this the diagonal. I'm going to line that up on my scant 1/4 inch line here, and that will allow us to sew the scant 1/4 inch to the left. Ooh, you guys, I'm sewing with shoes on again because there's still all these ants in the kitchen, so I don't have as good control over the foot pedal. But there we go. There's our first. And if you have a ton of these, you can just sew them all in a row. I'm starting and stopping just to show you the different ways of doing it. but it's way more fun to sew all these in a row. But all right, so there we go. That's our first line on that side. Now we're going to rotate it, and we'll sew on that other side. Again, I'm lining up that line. Okay, and that is all there is to that. All right, so now instead of, now is when we're going to cut it in half instead of doing it before like what we did there. So we're sewn on either side of that diagonal line, and now we're just going to take a ruler and our rotary cutter and cut along that diagonal. There we go. So now we have the exact same thing as what we did here, but we didn't have to deal with it stretching as we sewed it all, really. So, all right, that is that. So now, now we have our half square triangles. So here we are. So there was, before we press those open, I think she was doing it a little different. Draw a diagonal line from, okay, wait. Sew an A triangle, B triangle, and make a half square triangle unit. Make 4 units that measure 2 inches square. Okay. So ultimately we have the, these are the pressing guides, and ultimately they're pressed in 2 different directions. So I'm wondering if we should press them in 2 different directions right away. So we'll do those 2 in one direction, and I'm just going to flip it so the blue's on the top, so those will go in the other direction. Normally I don't worry about this so much, what direction it's in, but for this particular block, I think it's going to matter. So, all right, I'm just going to hit it with some heat first, and then we'll fold that open. And here is our first half square triangle. And we will trim this down to 2 inches as well, just to make sure everything's all nice and perfect. Because we are playing with precision with this block. And today I am being a little bit more precise than I usually bother with. I mean, I don't care if I have a few clipped corners here or there, and chances are we'll probably still end up with not all our corners being, or not all our points being perfect, but that's okay. Last one here. But I just wanted to, I can tell this is the starch one. I just wanted to show you, kind of, if you want to get real technical, trying to be more precise. Because I know, at least with me, in the Splendid Sampler 1, for sure that scant 1/4 inch was tough. All my blocks ended up being all different sizes. They were either too big, like they ended up being 7 inches instead of 6.5, or they ended up being smaller, like 6 inches, which was kind of a bummer. So I'm just trying to be a little bit more precise, just to show you guys off the bat here. But after this block, I might just kind of try and crank through them a little bit more. All right, we need to trim these now. So typically when you're doing half square triangles, when you're done, you want to trim them to whatever size they're needed to be, because that'll get rid of the dog ears, and it will just make sure that it's the correct size unit. Because a lot of times with half square triangles, in the directions, they make it a hair bigger, and then because you can cut them down. I don't know if they did that in these directions, so we're going to see. All right, these need to be 2 inches, and I am like right almost at that 2 inch mark. I don't have much to cut down, but I still want to trim. So I have these rulers. It has a diagonal line right on that. So I am going to put that diagonal line on my diagonal seam, and I'm going to just trim this, but I got to make sure that I have at least the 2 inches, so I barely have anything to trim here. I think you'll find on some of these other patterns, this one is really precise, but a lot of the times in the Splendid Sampler 2 patterns, I'm guessing they'll give us some leeway. Like sometimes we'll have like a 1/4 inch around here, so that'll make it a whole lot easier to trim because these are ending up being like exact. So in theory, I could have started out with a little, we started out with those 2 3/8 inch squares that we originally cut. I could have done 2 1/2 inch, a little bit bigger, and that would have given me a little leeway here. And we'll do that in the future, but I wanted to just do it how the instructions said this time and see. But yeah, this is a little, I prefer to have some more edge to cut off. I mean, you're not wasting fabric this way, and I know a lot of quilters like that, but I'd rather be able to be more precise or have like more leeway so I can be more precise. So now I'm doing it the other 2 edges. Again, I'm lining the 2 inches up exactly and the diagonal. Ugh, yeah, I barely have any. I have just a hair edge here. Hardly anything on this side. Okay, so now we have our perfect little 2-inch piece. So I'm going to set that aside and we'll do these other 4. You're going to want to do all of them individually because you are just being more precise. Ooh, this one's maybe a little shy of 2 inches. Bummer. See, that's the thing. If your sewing is a little off, if you cut these perfectly, then you're going to have less than your 2 inches that you need. So again, another reason to try to do your half square triangles a little bit bigger to start out with. But we're going to deal with what we got here. It's a good reminder, though. I haven't done this in a while, and I think in the future, this is a good reminder that in the future to remember to, hey, we're making half square triangles, let's maybe start a little bit bigger so we make sure that we have enough to cut off afterwards. So I'm guessing a lot of you are in this same situation too, where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have 2 inches here. And that's why. The pieces that the designer had us cut were to get the exact size when we were finished, which is actually kind of nice. Like if I didn't want to be so precise, and if I was making a whole quilt like this, I probably wouldn't need to trim at all. I could just grab all my pieces and keep sewing, which would be kind of cool because I know that my pieces are all exactly pretty much that 2 inches anyway. Oh, did I just trim off too much? Wait, no, good. Whew. I thought I measured on the wrong line there. But nope, we still got our 2 inches there. See what I mean though? Working on these pieced blocks, it looks super easy, but there is like more precision and time involved. You're scared of slipping and making it too small. Oh man, so Gretchen, if you haven't started yet this part, I would suggest instead of cutting, ooh yeah, look, this one's too small. Oh no. Oh well. It's just right on the cusp. Maybe if I pressed it a little bit more. Kind of stretch it open a little bit. I would suggest that if you haven't cut your squares out yet, I would cut your squares for just where you're going to do the half square triangles. Cut them a hair bigger, and by a hair I mean like you can even go a half an inch bigger. So instead of the 2 3/8, I would at least do 2 1/2. If you haven't cut your pieces yet. But again, I thought we'd try it how the instructions say. And there is benefit to having your pieces end up being just like this. Like I said, if you wanted to not do this trimming and just continue with your quilt, if you're doing a whole quilt like this would be pretty snazzy that your pieces are already perfectly sized, pretty much. But yeah, for real precision, I like ending up with a bigger square that we can cut down. But all right, this one's a little shy, but in the end scheme of things, I think we'll probably be okay. All right, so we did that first part. Draw a diagonal line from the corner to corner on the wrong side of the D squares, the yellow print squares. Those are our tan squares. Look how pretty these colors are together, though. I really like that. All right, so these guys, we're going to draw lines on the wrong side, and then we're going to just add them to the corner there. So that's our blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of this. We're going to line it up the edges like this, and then we are going to sew directly on the diagonal so that when we press it open, we'll have a little cute little corner there. So that's our next little bit. Our next little step here. We're making this little perfect center. You know what? I'm going to keep using this little seam guide for my diagonal line drawer. It's just the right size. So now this is a little different than our half square triangles where, you know, remember I sewed that line down the diagonal and then sew on either side. This is different. I'm just going to be sewing directly on that line. Could starch shrink your squares? Ooh, Gretchen, that is a good question. I think that's true. I think the starch maybe could shrink the squares. So all the better reason to, if you are going to use starch, to starch your fabric before you cut it out. So maybe that's actually why, maybe that's why my one square is a little bit smaller. Maybe that's the one that I starched. That could be starch those triangles. So yeah, if you're using starch, I recommend starching the fabric before you cut it, which is what I did on the last Splendid Sampler quite a bit. But I don't know, we're going to try and get away with it this time. Starch really will make this whole world a little bit easier though, because your pieces will be a little stiffer and easier to sew, especially when we're working with like pieces this small. So give it a go. I'm just trying to stay away from it because it really made my iron icky last time. So all right, we are sewing on all these blue parts. So I'm going to just line up the blues just so I don't forget that, you know, so I don't accidentally sew on the yellows. Stack these up. Okay, so now I'm going to grab, when I'm going to grab one from each pile and I'm going to line up those two edges, and then we're just going to sew along here, and I'm going to do all of them at once. So all right, let's go to the machine. It might be time to sip another sip of coffee, I think. My latte, so this is, we have Dunn Brothers in town here, and they make yummy lattes. Let me know if you guys are sipping your coffee this morning too. Lattes make Saturday nicer, doesn't it? All right, so here are my two piles. I'm gonna just have them right next to me here. I'm gonna grab the two, and remember I'm on the blue, and we wanna make sure that diagonal is the same way as our diagonal here. So sometimes it's hard to match the lines perfectly. If you just scratch the top fabric, I call it kitty scratching. Like if you wanna scratch the neck of a kitty, just kitty scratch it, and that will nudge the fabric into place. So I'm gonna, because we are dealing with precision this time, I am gonna just nudge it. So now we're perfectly on both edges there. And you know what else helps for precision? I got a little stiletto here. This is actually a turkey lacer with some beads on, but it has a nice sharp point that actually helps. It's like a little extra hand that helps me guide pieces around, especially, you know, if I want to get this precision of like getting it into my machine here. I'm going to use this stiletto here. Keep the edges together. All right, it kind of acts as a pin. I can hold it down, two pieces of fabric. Let's go. All right, I'm going right on the line. Actually, you know what I'm doing? I'm going a hair on the side of the line that's closer to the outside point. You know, kind of like I'm on the inside of the line a little bit. That'll give us some leeway to deal with the thickness of the fabric. So kind of the same way as the scant 1/4 inch versus a 1/4 inch. All right, so there's our first one. grab the second one. And this is chain piecing where we, oops, I hit you guys, sorry. Oh, you've called it, Pamela, you've called it an evening and have a glass of wine. Nice! Yeah, I know some of you guys are in the evening there. All right, I'm kitty scratching into place. And let's get our second piece. So chain piecing is where you just sew a bunch of, you know, instead of taking it off the machine, like how we did the half square triangles, we're gonna just keep, oop, I'm stuck. There we go. We're gonna just keep sewing in one long chain. Again, I'm just on the inside of that, or the outside really, I suppose, of that line. Next up, oop, grab both. Oh, you're making a fresh cup. No! Hey, maybe if it's early for you and it's wine time, that's okay too. It's never too early for wine time, right? Okay, here's our third one. If you guys have been sewing with me for a while, I'm betting you're telling that, oh man, she's being like way more perfectionism and precise than usual, and I am. I'm just trying to be a little bit more precise with this one. Our first precise block, I'll try and be a little precise. Ooh, my foot has that angle on that always gets in the way. Okay. This is our last one. All right, and we'll get the other leader on there. All right, and here's our chain. So that's why it's called chain piecing. Look how cute they are. All right, so let's snip that. We will snip all these off. I like putting them in the same direction again. Okay, next up. Oh man, you just finished cooking some sausage and egg biscuits. Yum, Deborah. Ooh, and fresh peach cobbler. Oh man, I want to come to your house. Okay, so here is the next step. Typically, how some people do this is where we would snip the edge, so we have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we'd press it open. What I'm going to do instead, so here's a little trick, a way to be more precise. So this ends up as the 2-inch square, is I'm going to leave this edge on, and I'm going to use it as a guide for pressing. So I'm going to try and press this open and have it line up with my edges there. It's just a nice little guide, because if I cut it first, then those edges are gone, right? And if I press this, then I don't know like where the perfect square is. But if I leave them here and then press, I will be able to line it up with my edges perfectly. So that's a little trick for you know, keeping that nice 2.5 inch. Oh, but you know what? They want us to press in the opposite direction. So there's something a little special here. If you see these pressing angles, some of them we want to press towards that small point, and some we want to press away. So that's kind of interesting. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with my normal way of doing it just so I can get the points nice, and then I'm going to have to press a few of them the other direction, because I want to make sure that I get this. I think getting this square, see how I'm lining it up now with the other block? I think that's more important right now than pressing the seam allowances in the opposite direction. But I can do that right away. So I already pressed some to that direction, and now if I just open this and press it to that direction, I think we'll be good. It's a little weird extra step that I don't normally do. But in this block, it's kind of a little study of that, of seam allowance direction. So I'm being real futzy with this too, more than usual. So okay, so now I'll still trim this, but all the seams are going towards my big triangle. We need 2 that are like that. Yep, this one goes to that direction too. But first, I'm doing it in the opposite direction again, just so I can match up, get that square. Because some I need to like stretch a little bit more or maneuver a little bit more. Like if I sewed a little bit funny. So I think we're all lined up here. But now, again, this seam allowance in particular needs to be in that other direction. So I'm going to just open it up. A little goofy. And press it in that direction. So we may need to press those two again. But now this one, see, now this one's going in the other direction. I'm pointing towards that blue. This one's more typical to how I would do it, because I don't have to go back and change direction. But here, let's get that, yeah, right at the right point. Leave it on there. There we go, all lined up, and all the seams are going that way. And our last one, I always kind of heat up the thread a little bit first. That kind of sets the seam into the fabric. And then I do my, ooh, see this one I need to nudge out a little bit, pull on it a little bit. I know we are overkilling it for sure, Nita. So yeah, like I said, if you're with me on other blocks when I'm doing this, I'm not usually this finicky and precise, but today we're doing it. Today we are going all out on precision land. So all right, here are our pieces. These two are pressed in the one direction, and these ones are pressed in the other. So we need to get rid of that extra seam allowance now. So in anti-precision way, I just trim it. So make sure you get that piece that you need out of the way. And I'm just going to cut with the scissors about 1/4 inch away. Zoop, there. That's perfectly fine. So there we go, our 2 seam allowances. If you want to get real precise, just open it up, grab your ruler, put the 1/4 inch on your seam that you just did, and then snip it with the rotary cutter. I know a lot of people are way more comfortable doing it that way, because then you have a nice perfect seam. I'm perfectly fine cutting it with the scissors. So here we go, our open seam again. I think it's just fast with the scissors, and it doesn't have to be perfect at this point anymore. And then here is that second. Just remember, really make sure to get this out of the way. You don't want to accidentally cut it like this, and then you've cut off your triangle. All right, but there we go. Here is all of our center pieces. So again, these two have the seam allowance pressed one way, and you know what, I might just press those again. Those are those ones that we kind of double pressed. I think we're gonna just give it one more press. Oh, you're gonna get more precise on yours, Gretchen? Yeah, so that's why, you know, this is our first block that we've done like this, so I wanted to be extra precise with this one, so you can take some of these tips for the future if you're having trouble with this one. But again, I don't usually care if it's super perfect or not, but I do want to just show you the ways that you can make it as perfect as you can before I get sloppy on you guys. But all right, look at these cute, pretty pieces. I love the colors that we chose. I think they're just going to be so sweet. We're going to have that cool look here. We can start seeing how it looks. Like we're going to have that neat diamond in there. It's going to be so sweet. All right, so we've done this part and we've pressed them in the opposite directions. Let's get, yeah, okay, so those two are in one direction and these two are in the other direction. Okay, did that. Okay, arrange and sew the units in rows, rotating them as shown. Okay, that's a little vague, but I think it just means like this. So we got this row. We want to pair the seams that go in the opposite direction. So you see this one was pointing that way and these seams are pointing that way. We want to pair the opposite seams together. So here we go again. This one's going this direction. These ones are going this direction. So these are our two rows. So first you kind of have to arrange them and then make sure that you are matching the opposite seam directions, seam allowance press directions, but there we are. So all right, we're going to sew these two together and then we're going to sew those two together and we will have our first two little rows. Okay, so this is the fanciness of these seams pressed in opposite directions. And I have not done it at an angle like this before, so this will be interesting. But in theory, when we put those seams together, so these have to match, so let's fold it over. Since they are pressed in opposite directions, so you can see like this one's going this way and this one's going the other way, in theory we can nest them together. And what that means is because there's like a little fold here, because it's bulky on that side, and the opposite way here, the seams should just bump up against each other. So you can actually feel the bump on when it hits there. And it's that way of holding it together with that bump that's going to give us the, and this bottom piece too, got to do both of them, bump those together. That's what's going to give us our perfectly matched seams. So when they're bumped together like this, I usually don't ever pin it because I can feel that bump. If I can feel that those bumps are together, I know we're going to be good. However, if you have some pins or some Wonder Clips, like if you're a little nervous, feel free to use those. I like the Wonder Clips. These are the mini Wonder Clips here. Check the bottom also. Did I miss the bottom? I think we're good. We just need to get both of these. So we have two seams to bump up, right? So you know, I got this seam and this seam. So it's not just, we're not just dealing with one seam. So let's bump up those two seams. And I also got to make sure that my edge is matched up too, right? All right, so I can feel those bumped together. And I'm going to just throw a Wonder Clip on there just to hold that in place. And now I'm going to bump these two together too. And I'm going to just do that one by feel. Okay, so now I should be able to sew along this edge. And in theory, we should be pretty good on our seams. Let's see how it goes. Okay. So again, I'm going to use this as my 1/4" seam allowance guide. All our edges matched up. We'll see how it goes. This is always where I get nervous. Again, I'm trying to be way more perfect than I usually am on this. So I can feel those bumped up together still, I think. Normally I would chain these together. Actually, I am going to chain them together still. Let's try and do these two. So this one, maybe I'll try and do it without the Wonder Clip. Check and see if I need to change the other two pieces so they'll butt up with the top two. I think that'll happen later for the direction of how we press the other ones. So, oh, I'm just looking at the directions. It looks like we're pressing it open after this. So we're only worried about these guys bumping up, these diagonals bumping up together. So, all right, I'm going to line up this edge again, and I'm going to try and, like I said, I'm going to try and do this one by hand. So I can feel, you know, the seam allowances are in the opposite direction again. I can feel them bump up. And then this bottom piece, I need to feel it bump up together too. Great. And I'm going to just kind of hold them there with my stiletto instead. And try and still stitch that scant 1/4". Like I can just actually lay it flat here and tell if they're bumped up against each other or not. Am I doing something wrong? Check to see if you need to change the other two pieces so they butt up with the top two squares. It looks like, oh, did I sew something wrong? I don't know, we'll see right now, I suppose. You guys are always good at catching that, I don't know. All right, here we are. So now we can see if I did it right or wrong, and we can see how precise we actually are. So, okay, that was our first piece. And here's our second. So, okay, let's open them up. Ooh, so now here I was on perfectly. So right up there, see how that point comes to a point? That got butted up perfectly, but here, this one I'm a little bit off here. So I didn't bump those up perfectly on that one. Let's see how we did on this one. Ooh, now this one's looking good. So here you can see right both points look like they totally match up really, really well. So this one, this is the one that I did without the Wonder Clip. So just by feel, like feeling it bumped up together, that worked better for me, at least, you know, this time around, than using that clip. But see how they both come, all the fabric sides come to a point really, really well there compared to here where I was a little bit off. But perfectly fine. So there we go. We got our top and bottom pieces. So cute. All right. Arrange and sew units in rows, rotating them as shown at the right. Press. Sew the rows together to make the block center. That measures a 3.5-inch square. Okay, so here it is our pressing directions. So it has arrows going both ways. So in this case, what that means is we're going to press this open. And I think the reason for that is that we might be reducing bulk overall. But so, you know, what's a bummer is we could press this in one direction and then this one in the other direction and bump up our seams again. I'm almost tempted to do that. Bump up our seams again to get that perfect center. Oh, I see what you guys meant now. Hold on a sec. Oh, okay, so you guys, I did do that wrong. So this is what you guys were talking about. So I was supposed to rotate. Okay, so here's my problem. So I press these in one direction, I press these in the other direction, which are great, right? But I did it the same way here too, but now look what I did. Now if I put these together, now they're going in the same direction, right? And that's not what we want. We wanted those in opposite directions. So I should have taken this piece and put it here, and this piece and put it here. So now we don't have the opposite directions, and I should have checked. So that's what you guys meant. I couldn't quite figure it out, but yeah. So see, they're going in the same direction. That's not as great. So let's just I'm going to show you guys like this, just so we can see if I can match them up still. But here's the problem. I don't have those bumps to match up, so I'm going to have to be more precise. Like I'm going to have to use Wonder Clips and all that. The other option is I could just press this, but then we'd have like some weird crisscross. But bummer, you guys. So good. So it's good that I made this mistake, so hopefully you guys don't. So when you're laying it out in your fours, just make sure that, you know, they're opposite this way, but you also have to make them opposite up and down. So it's like a little puzzle piece. But, oh well. Gotta make some mistakes along here, right? Ah, well. So I'm going to just keep going ahead, though, because, you know, if it was you, if not... Well, not if it was you, but like if you're feeling like, oh man, I have to take it out now. Like if you're tempted to get your seam ripper and take it apart, I would suggest not doing that. I would just suggest keeping on going with it, because these are so precise, these little squares, that if you take it out, like take the seam out, it might kind of stretch things out a little bit. I could press it in an opposite direction now, but then I would have this little twist in here. I could snip it so it's okay, and we're gonna have more twists like that along with the Splendid Sampler, but I'm gonna just see what happens if I sew it this way. But it is a big bummer because I love nesting seams together. It's just so cool how you can just feel that bump, and then all of a sudden your seams just come out perfect. Your points come out perfect because you feel that bump and you've bumped them together there. So I love nesting seams open. So there's kind of a debate. A lot of people like pressing all their seams open like this. And some people like pressing to a side so you can bump them together. I love the nesting the seams, the bumping them together versus the open seam. So I'm kind of bummed that we didn't do this quite right, but oh well. It's still gonna look pretty. Oh, you did the same thing, but you can clip it if you sew in the opposite. That's true. So I could, like we're talking about, I could flip one side of these and then just clip it in, or just like cut a little snip. Good snip idea. You're always getting crooked seams. All right, well, you know, what if we do that on one? Let's take one side and we'll fold them over so we can nest them. And then the other side I won't nest, and we'll see what the difference is. How about that? All right, so this one I've kind of pressed in the opposite direction. We're gonna have a little kind of goofy thing going on there. And then the other side I won't. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so here we go. I always like checking, you know, so I don't accidentally sew it together like this. Ooh, these are cute though. Look, it's like some fancy flying geese. It's always fun to kind of lay out in different directions, and then you can see what other patterns, but this would be a cute quilt just like that. But we're not doing that. We're going like that. Okay, so let's fold this over, or flip it over. And so now we have this open seam here instead of a nested seam. So I gotta visually look to see if those seams are aligned. And that I am gonna put a wonder clip on just to make sure that it's as perfect as I can get it. You know, again, normally, if I was normally sewing this without being perfect, I would just sew and be done. I wouldn't putz with all the lining up, but today we're putzing. All right, so these are the ones that I flipped in the opposite direction. So those are the ones I can butt up, do that nesting. So I can butt those up, I can feel those. And I probably don't need pins or anything because I can actually physically feel those. And this side, I have that problem though where they're going the same direction. So in this direction, I can feel the bump, but I got 6 layers of fabric on this side. So the 2 seam allowances, the fabric, and then the 2 seam allowances. This side, I only have I only have 2 pieces of fabric. So that's a big thickness difference. So because my needle has to like kind of jump thicknesses and stuff, that might ruin my precision. And same here, that might ruin my precision on these seams. So that's what I kind of want to test. We'll see. So again, this side is nested, all perfect. So there's the same amount of fabric on each side. And then this one is that big jump that we're gonna have to do. So let's give it a go. We'll see how it matches in the end. In theory, I could take a wonder clip and put these together, but again, I'm gonna just try and leave it like this. So let's feel this out again. Let's turn this on first. Okay, I can actually feel that bump. I can feel when the bump's working and when it's not. I'm gonna hold it down, line it up with my scant 1/4 inch mark. You know, sometimes I feel like I need an extra little skinny finger, and that's when I get my stiletto in there. All right. Take that off, and I'm gonna hold it in place with my stiletto. This is our center seam that's pressed open. So we got 3 different seams here. We got pressed open, nested together, and then this crazy way where I have like 6 pieces of fabric on one side and 2 on the other. This is the tough part. So I'm kind of just feeling it, and I'm gonna hold it there with my stiletto to hopefully get them together. And the same way here. Hopefully it'll be close. Ooh, I can kind of feel though that I'm going through a lot of layers there. And here we go. So again, we have 3 different seams there. Oh, I veered off the end there too. Let's see how we did here. Okay, so here we are. These are our nested seams, our center seam, and our non-nested seams. So in theory, these ones should be the best, but you know, it can always be off. But look, okay, so those are looking pretty good. Yeah, I think those match. Our center is pretty matchy, and let's see how we did down here. Oh yeah, so here, this is where we didn't nest the seams. I am a little off there. So there you go. I think nested seams, I like them, but look how cute. All right. I don't think it will matter with the next seams because we're going to do those next. So you can see here, this top row later, we're going to nest that with this row. See, these seams are pressed that way. These seams are pressed that way. We're going to deal with that next. But for this center area, I think they're just having us press open. It looks like they forgot to put an arrow there, but I'm guessing it's another press open. All right, so I'm going to press it open. I think typically in these designs, when there's a whole lot of fabric together like there is here, a lot of people like pressing it open. And since it was pressed open here, I'm assuming that they want this pressed open as well. So let's do that, and then we'll have to like clip into that little seam if we're getting fancy. By fancy, if we're getting into perfection mode. Ooh, I think my iron turned off. All right, let's press this open. It's definitely a lot of fabric in the middle there, but it is looking cute, I think. So you guys, we've almost been on here for 2 hours already. Can you believe it? So if you want to get precise and make a teeny tiny block, this is a 2-hour block, just this little 3-inch piece or whatever here, 3.5-inch square. I think the rest will go a little faster. So we'll at least get it started. But this is all the real precision. The rest is going to be much easier, I think. So we're good and squished there. Okay, so here we are, our little piece. So here's where we flip those seams. You could snip into those so they lay nicer one way or the other. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think I'm going to just leave them as is. We'll just, you know, this is all bulky, so if there's a little extra bulk there, we're just going to live with it. But there we go. All in all, not too shabby. There's a couple little bits off, you know, a couple little points, not perfect, but dang. As far as how I usually sew, this is a whole lot of perfect points. All these outside ones look really good. You know, we'll have to sew those. We might clip those later on accident because we still have to sew this seam. You know, if we sew too far out, we'll get more yellow. If we sew too far in, we'll clip the blue off. But if we get it exactly right, then we'll be good. But yeah, not too shabby. Just a couple little guys off there. Can't tell at all, really. Love it! All right, next up, let's move on. This is a big first part to get done on this block. Okay. We are donezo with that. I think we're done with this. Oh, let's just measure quick because we're being exact this time. Let's see how close we got to the 3.5-inch square. Ooh, and you guys, look, I am off. So this should be 3.5 inches. You can see I'm about a 1/16 inch off on both sides, which means that I am, my seam allowances are too big right now. So I need to go a little more scant because I'm using up too much fabric with my seam allowance. And we have a lot of fabric happening here, so it makes sense. But look, if I would keep on continuing, this would get smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's a problem. So for the rest of it, maybe I'll try to go a little more scant on my seam allowances to make that up, which is maybe not a good idea either. Well, actually, well, I don't know. Yeah, we'll just keep going. But now I know, at least for future blocks, I may be going a little too close to a 1/4 inch. So I need to go a little more scant on my scant seam allowances. So here you go. Oh, this is the story of your life. It's always a little too small. Well, but that's a good notifier. So if I'm a little off on here, so I need to make my scant 1/4 inch even skinnier, which means I need to make these seam allowances a little skinnier than what I'm doing. So there we go. But that's, you know, I'm being perfect, like way more perfectionist with this block, but that's just a good indicator. So if you measure it along the way, then you'll know like, oh, you know, it looks like I'm maybe typically all my stuff is ending up smaller. So that must mean that I should adjust my scant 1/4 inch a little bit. So it's a good indicator. It's a good education tool for that. Oh, you had to make the center twice? Yeah, the center, I mean, it looks so simple, right? But it's a lot going on with it, really. But yeah, so mine's a hair too small. So, you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. So I know in the future blocks, I'll probably keep my scant 1/4 inch the same for this time around because I don't want it to affect the rest. So this block might be a hair smaller. So yeah, my next blocks, I'll have to adjust that 1/4 inch mark a little bit. But good, it's good, that's why we check it, right? Okay, the rest of this should go real easy and faster, I think. Draw a diagonal lane from corner to corner on the wrong side of the E squares. Those are these itty bitty pieces. Yeah, these ones. Using the stitch and flip method, that's how we did that little extra piece in the center. Sew an E square to a corner of a C square. The C's were the red print. Okay, the red print, which is our yellow print. Okay, to these. Okay, using make 8. Okay, so that should be all of them. We have 8 of these squares. We're gonna sew these onto a corner of all of them. And it looks like we're doing the same thing here. We're sewing half, or we're pressing half of them in one direction and half of them in the other. All right, but let's draw these diagonals first. All these little steps take time, but they do help. So that's again why I said, you know, this looks like a simple pieced block, but you know, it might take quite a bit of time here because you forget all these little extra steps. Help with the precision, but take time. Like I could just sew an eyeball from here to there, but we're being precise. We're drawing the lines. You added a 1/4 inch to your cuts today. We'll see. Oh, for Leslie Ann, to get those half square triangles right. Yeah, I would do that. Cute little white pieces here. So this part is, in theory, easier because there's less, we're only sewing this one little bit in. We're not having that extra piece, but there are more pieces here, so it'll still take time. So thanks for hanging out again with me this morning, you guys. I know this is way longer than we normally do it. In our normal evening scopes, we're only here for about an hour. We're just sticking this out today. So again, here, I'm going to sew along that edge. I'm actually, like I said, I'm going to sew a hair towards this side, the outside point. So just on the inside of this line is really where I'm going to sew. That'll make up for the thickness of the fabric again when we press it open. So all right, I got my 2 stacks. Let's sew these fellers in a row. Get that guy on. So the light from my machine is right here, and it reflects in my extension table. So we don't have to worry about seam allowance being perfect for this one because we're just sewing along this line. I'm going to get my little stiletto in here to help me. Okay, first one. Oh, no problem, Deborah. Oh, and keep in mind, I mean, I'm using white here, but if you're using a pattern fabric, make sure that you're drawing this line on the wrong side of the fabric because you want to put the right sides of the fabric together. I didn't pay attention to that because I'm just using this white fabric. Okay, 6 more to go. Oh, you made the half square triangles, Karen, a little bit larger and trimmed to the 2 inches. Super duper smart. Oh, that was your second time around. Yep. I would definitely recommend that as well. There are benefits for it being perfectly and exact, you know, to get started with, but it is so much easier when you go a little bit bigger and then trim down, like it really is. So we're going to pay attention to that in future blocks so that we're doing it kind of that way to make it a little bit easier on us. We'll waste a little bit more fabric, but it'll be more precise, I think, and just take a weight off of, take the pressure off, basically, because you'll be able to trim it down later. That's kind of the most important thing. How can I make this less stressful, right? This shouldn't be stressful. Isn't this interesting, though, how different this block is compared to the ones we have been making that are just like fun appliques and stuff? Even that first block with the strips, we did not have to be as precise as we are with this one, right? So what an interesting study, I think. You know, and some people really like the looseness of, you know, maybe some other blocks, and some people really love digging into this like super precision stuff. So it's just, you know, different personalities like different things. And, you know, for me, I definitely don't like dealing with all this precision all the time. But I am, you know, I'm just using it as I see it as like an opportunity to try and get a little bit better. Like I can practice my sewing in a straight line, which I have struggled with. It's a chance for me to practice that. It's a chance for me to test if my scant 1/4 inch is any good. And we noticed, I mean, we figured out that I'm not scant enough. You know, it's a tool. Would I want to do a whole quilt like this? I don't know. It might not be for me, all this super duper precision. But here we go. Here's our blocks. Oh, you think this is the first one that we've done that's all been pieced to size? Yeah, like where every little thing turns out, it has to turn out to an exact size when we're done. Or that it's, you know, we don't trim down any of our pieces really. Yeah. So I'm stacking these in 2 things of 4 because remember we are, ooh, that one got a little bunched up at the beginning. We are pressing these these triangles in opposite directions. So all right, let's start with these. So 4 are going one way and then the other seam allowances are going the other way. I'm doing it the same way as last time. Where I'm gonna not trim them yet. I'm gonna use the edge. Sorry, we're shaking it just a hair. I'm gonna use the edge of the square that's still on there. I'm gonna use that as a guide to press it in the right direction, or press it in the to line up the edges. So it ends up being a square versus, you know, if I don't do that and I don't quite know where the square is. So we're going to use that as a guide again. Yes, Karen, that's a very good point. So Karen says smaller blocks like these with smaller pieces, with many pieces, have a lot less wiggle room, especially when it comes to seam allowance. So like if these are just 4 pieces stitched together and my scant 1/4 inch was off, we might not notice. But when there's a whole pile of pieces, then your seam allowance gets smaller and smaller or bigger and bigger with each one. You're going to notice all of a sudden that, oh, that doesn't measure 3.5 inches when I'm done. It's a 1/16 of an inch off all the way around. So all these small pieces together, that's really that's a helpful indicator of, you know, how we're doing with our scant 1/4 inch. Nora, you admire people who can cut and sew that precisely. Me, not so much. Yeah, ditto. I think it, like I said, I think it's a personality type. I mean, I can attempt to get better and better at it, and I'm trying to do, and man, if you saw my first blocks from the Splendid Sampler 1, I am infinity times better at precision than that. But yeah, I gotta work for it, that's for sure. Okay, so here's our first one. So these are the ones that are going to be pressed in the opposite direction. I wonder if I can do it like this. Oh wait, but then I'm not matching up. I want to get that square, that nice square edge first. So we'll press these first, and then we'll flip that seam in the other way again, like we did last time. Yeah, because here I'm not as precise, so I'm just kind of tugging on it a little bit so it matches up those edges, so it's more square. Okay, put that aside there. These ones, like I said, we have to get these seam allowances in the other direction yet, but I want to get it kind of squared up first. Gotta say, I still am loving this this iron where I don't have the dang cord. Ooh, you guys, after I'm done here today, I am, the hubs and I are going to S.R. Harris. And if you guys, I've talked about it before, but S.R. Harris is a fabric store in town here. It's kind of like second, or like, what's that called? Like cast off fabric, or, you know, like for fabric companies that they didn't sell a bunch of one fabric, so they're trying to sell it for cheaper to stores. It's that type of store, but it's a gigungous warehouse of all different sorts of fabric. And they're having a sale on, here I'm going to press the seam allowance in the other direction now. They're having a sale on like 60% off linen and 60% off upholstery fabric. And we want to recover a couple cushions. And, you know, I always want to look at pretty linen. I actually might get some linen for our next project, the sketchbook cover project, in case you guys wanted some linen in the same kind that I'll be working with. So I'm going to be looking for linen there. And, yeah, some upholstery fabric. So it is a fabric Saturday. I'm pretty stoked. I haven't been there in a while, but it's crazy. You know what? I'll be sure to take some Instagram photos or some Instagram stories while I'm there. So later today, if you want to see a crazy fabric store, go check out my Instagram, which is Penguin and Fish, and I'll do some Instagram stories there. But yay, I'm so excited. All right. We are so finicky with this today, though. This is a perfect Saturday thing, because if we were doing this in the evening, during my normal remainders, that's it, Paul, the fabric remainders, the cast-off kind of fabric. But if we were doing this block in our normal evening scopes, first of all, we wouldn't be doing it all at once. We probably would have just gotten the cutting done. But man, I would not have been able to be as precise as what I'm doing today. That's for sure. I don't have this type of precision brain in the evenings. So it's good to know that, though. Like, if I know in the mornings I can be more precise, that's the time to do precise blocks like this, right? Okay, I think we're fine. Those are in the other direction now. So here's my stack in the one direction, and these are the dudes with the seam allowance in the other direction. So we need to trim those yet. So again, I'm going to just flip our good piece away. Where'd my big scissors go? And again, you can use the a ruler and your rotary cutter, but this just seems so fast. And you know, that's as good of a 1/4 inch as I'd get anywhere else. It's a dangerous place to go, though. You gotta go, it's like going to Target. You have to go with a plan in mind, otherwise you're gonna end up buying a whole pile of extra stuff. So that's the challenge. Let's get in and out of there without buying a whole pile of extra stuff. Okay, those are all the ones going in the one direction, and these are the ones going in that other direction, which is kind of goofy. All right. Two more. But yeah, I'm actually not getting, usually I get stressed out, not stressed, but like kind of mini anxiety in the background when I'm working on pieced blocks like this that take a long time, that you're doing a whole pile of little finicky steps, like having to snip 8 things, you know, that's kind of a lot for such a little finicky step. But feeling pretty good today. So yep, Saturday mornings are my time to do this sort of block, I think. All right, next up, it looks like we sew those together. So we need to make 4 of each. Oh man, so now these, doesn't matter which direction I go in. Oh no, it doesn't, good. So look, remember how we had that problem where I did the top and bottom in the wrong directions? I did the sides right, but not the top to bottom. We don't have to deal with that this time because these are just going off into space, these little nicks. So we don't have to match them with anything on the other side. So I don't have to worry. I don't have to like puzzle piece them together. I just need to put them in 2s. So these two, I'm taking them from each pile. Those 2, and then these 2. So it does not matter. Those don't have to match up again like how we did here. So let's sew these together. Let's see, we need to rotate them. There, we need to make, yeah, there we go. We need to make them all look like this with the little white nick out of the side there. So let's give that a go. Off to the sewing machine. So now, again, we have those seam allowances going in the opposite directions. So we should be able to match those up and just bump them together. See, this seam's going to the left and this one's going to the right. I should just be able to bump them together and I should be able to feel that. I don't think I need to put a clip or anything. I just need to feel that, and I can feel it actually on the table here too, them bumped together. I need to shift a little bit, line up the edges a little bit better, but we'll give it a go. And again, I'm using kind of like the same scant 1/4 inch seam allowance as I have been, just so I'm consistent throughout this block. So this whole block will probably end up a hair smaller than than it's supposed to be. But yeah, in the future, I just got to remember, make my seam allowance a little bit more scant, so a little skinnier. At least on small blocks, or blocks like this where there's a lot of small parts. Are you starting the sketchbook cover with chevron when the chevron quilt is finished? Yes, Sally. So the next project after after my Charming Chevrons quilt that we're working on, Monday through Wednesdays, after that, we will be doing this sketchbook cover that has a little zipper pouch in the back of it. So it's kind of cool. It's like built into the sketchbook cover. It's from my book. From my book from several years ago. Geez, this is a whole crazy piece. And so we will look at that again and do that project. But I'll have more information on that soon. The books are hard to get right now because it's been out of print for a little while, and I'm having a really hard time getting my hands on some. So I do have a few copies of the book. I may actually try and get the pattern. I own all the patterns now, the book publisher doesn't own them anymore. So I might do the pattern if you don't want the whole book, and since the book is hard to find, I might try and do up the pattern on its own as well to have that as an option. Oh, I'm sorry, Julie. Yep, this will go up on YouTube when we're done. Wow, my pieces are a little off on here, so my seam allowances must have been a little all over the place here. I need that other leader. Don't know where it went. But I think we'll manage still here. Okay. Let's press these. So it looks like we're pressing these open. So it has like the little open arrow. So we're getting there, you guys. These are our last little pieces. The rest is just assembly. So we are getting close here, real close. We're on the last lap for sure. So when I press open, I always kind of press to one side first, just because it's a little easier. And then I go back and press it open. Oh, you have the book already. Oh yeah, so that's awesome. So a lot of you guys have the book already. Perfect. Then you won't need the extra little pattern or anything. It will be in the book. So it's towards the end of the book. It's the sketchbook cover with the little kitty, the felt kitty on it. But I'm going to embroider the llama on instead. So I have that new llama kit. Actually, the llama kits are over at Massdrop for only $13.99 for just like 2 or 3 more days. So if you go to massdrop.com and go to the quilting section, I think you'll see my embroidery kits. They're way cheap right now over there, but I'm going to stitch the llama on the front of my book cover. I'm not going to do that kitty from the book. So if you want to stitch the llama or one of my other kits on there, that's what I'll be doing. So I'm going to be live stitching it, live doing it with, you know, kind of like how we're doing now. We're going to do the whole project from beginning to end, that sketchbook cover. So yeah, if you want to join me for that, I'll be putting little bundles together for that too, because there's a zipper involved and the sketchbook. If you want to do the same size sketchbook and stuff that I'll be doing, I'll have a little, maybe like 20 or so bundles of that. So not a ton, but enough for a few guys. So I will, I'll let you know. I will send an email. Once I get that figured out a little bit more, I will send an email out exactly what the project will be and all that. We have a little bit of time on that chevrons quilt, like maybe 2 weeks or so on that chevrons quilt still. Because we got to do the binding and we have another row to sew on that. All right, this is our last one, and I think I'm just kind of glancing at the points, and all the points look amazing. I can tell that not all the pieces of fabric got lined up perfectly, but we put emphasis on those points. So I think that's kind of the way we're going here. So, here we go. Here are the points. Looking pretty good. See, like the end didn't match up perfectly, but I think that's fine. We're paying more attention to those points, so that looks good. Yeah, I think they all turned out great. And again, that's just from sandwiching those seams, nesting those seams together, where we butt those two where they're pressed in different directions, bumping them together. Those get like such good points. And like I said, I've never tried that before for diagonal seams like that. I've only done it for straight seams. So this is new to me. There's a new aspect to this quilt that I haven't done before. Okay, I think we're ready. Oh, these should measure. We can just do another little test. It tells us how these should measure. These should be 2 inches by 3.5 inches. Let's see how off we are here. See, now here we're looking exact. We're looking pretty good. We're right at the 2 inch and right at the 3.5 inch, which makes sense because we have a lot less pieces that we're dealing with. As we keep adding pieces, then we can start seeing where our errors are. Can you do the sketchbook folder? Ooh, a sketchbook folder would be really cool. Julie, I will be showing you during the sketchbook project how to adjust the pattern if you want to do it for a bigger book or a smaller book. So you can do the pattern for whatever size you want. So there will be that option when we work on that project. All right, I think we're just, so the F squares, wait, so the F squares, 4 side units and 3, oh, okay. So we have to, I'm just gonna kind of lay it out here. Oh gosh, look how far off that one was. Ugh. Oh well. They'd look pretty this way too, but we're going like that. Okay, so first what we need to do, we got one extra step yet. So these guys go in the corner. Look, our stars coming together, do you see it? Now that we got laid this background bit, oh, it's so cute, I love it. All right, first we have to sew these guys together. We have to sew this row together, and then we have to sew this row together. And it looks like we might be pressing all the middle seams open, but then these ones will press in different directions. So I'm going to sew all these first. So the way I'm going to sew this, just to keep things in order, is I'm going to sew it by columns. So I know that this row has to go together, this row has to go together, and this row has to go together. But to manage it so I can just keep chain piecing, I'm going to actually sew it by column. So I'm going to sew these 2 pieces, then these 2 pieces, then these 2 pieces. Then I'm going to cut this off of the chain and then sew this, then this, then this. So it's a little finicky. It's a little like mind mapping a little bit, trying to figure out how to do it. But as long as I keep organized like this, I should be sewing everything in order, and I should be able to just continuously sew instead of having to put the leader on and keep going. So again, this piece, this piece, this piece, and then this, and this is the order we'll be doing it. Well, you have kits for the sketchbook with the pattern, book, and zipper. So I think, Jenna, how I'm going to do it, I'm not positive yet, but I think I will have a bundle of stuff for the materials. So some fabric, like some outside fabric, the book, and the zipper, and the interior fabric. I'll have those as a thing, and then I will have the pattern and the sketchbook, or the pattern and the book separate, so you can decide what you want, if you want the book or if you want the pattern, just because I have a limited amount of books, and some of you have the book already, so you don't need either of those. So I'll have the book or just the pattern itself separately, and then I'll have a bundle for all the supplies together. I think that's how we're going to do it. Because then, you know, if you already have the book, then you're not rebuying the book or something. So this is where my seam allowance is way off here. Like I have this weird bump out because it didn't match up very good at the end. I'm going to just, this top is going to be like an 1/8 inch seam allowance in this bottom. So we have to match up this center seam here. It's pressed open. I'm going to just throw my Wonder Clip on there just to help it out. There we go. But yeah, so I think that's how I'm going to do the bundle for the sketchbook cover project. Just, yeah, because you don't want to double buy the pattern if you already have the book, you know. But I'm going to have like a little, I think I'm going to find some fun linen for the outside of the book cover, because that will make, it just feels fancy stitching on linen. I think it'll be pretty for the outside of the book cover. And then I'll have a fun fabric for the inside, some penguin and fish fabric, I think. Or you can choose your own too. Oh, you have the book already. You meant the sketchbook. Oh yes, so I will have I'll have a bundle with the sketchbook in it. All right, so see, I'm clipping off the top one now, and this is our one that we throw our next piece on. But yep, I will have a sketchbook. And then if you have your own sketchbook or a different book that you wanted to do, I'll show you how to adjust the pattern for different sizes of books. All right, let's clip the next one off. Oh, you guys, I forgot to mention something. So here's where we have to start looking at our points here. So we got lucky. I think we got the point, but we don't want to lose our points. Like if I sewed it too much, look, I would have lost that point. So let's pay attention to that this time. So here's the piece that it goes with. I'm going to put them together. I'm going to actually put the part with the point on the top. So here's what I do. I'll match these seams, and I'm going to sew my scant 1/4 inch, but I'm going to make sure, if you see this little triangle, because we pressed it open, I'm going to make sure I'm sewing right on top of that point. And by sewing right on top of that, I should have a good point. If I sew too far this way, I'm going to clip my point. If I sew too far this way, I'm going to have some extra yellow there. So I'm going to aim right for that point there. I forgot to do that last time, but luckily, because we've been so precise this whole time, or we've been like aiming for precision, we got lucky with our opposite point. And we're going to have to deal with that with the top and bottom bits later too. But whew, forgot about that. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to aim for that point. So one thread less to the point. So okay, yeah. So I have to remember that I have to deal with the thickness of the fabric. So yeah, instead of aiming right at the point, I'm going to go a hair to the right. So I just have a tish of that yellow part of it in yet. There we go. I think we did good. My needle's right in the center there, and now I'm going to just re-aim this edge over. Okay, and we have one more piece. Once pressed, it'll be perfect. Yeah, I can squish it. Yeah, with that one little thread over, it should be perfect. So, all right, last piece here. We have nothing that needs to be matched up with this really, so no need to putz with that right now. You guys, we only have 2 more seams to sew after this. Yay! Finishing this whole block today. I was not sure if we'd be able to do that, but here we go. Our bottom, middle, and top. Okay, let's scooch. So we're going to press this now, but I always just kind of like relaying it out so I don't mess up. This way. All right. And then this, so let's check our point. Oh yeah, so here, here I have maybe a little bit of yellow there, but because I maybe sewed it over just a hair too much. Yeah, I sewed it over just a hair too much. But it's not going to be that bad. And then this one will really press open. This one I did maybe a hair less, but it's going to turn out fine. But all in all, not too shabby. We didn't clip any of them. Like we didn't accidentally go, this is exaggerated a little bit, but if we go too far or too big of a seam allowance, then we lose our points. We didn't lose any points yet, so pretty happy about that. And then this piece. So, okay, here is another moment when the direction of the seam allowance is going to help us butt up these points here. So we're going to end up pressing one in one direction and the other in the other direction, right? And then I think this center one, I think we're pressing, they're already pressed open, so those ones are fine. But the ones that we just sewed, that's what we're worried with now. So let's see what it suggests. So for the top and bottom pieces, we're pressing to the inside, and for the middle piece, we're pressing out. So on these two, we're pressing in. This one and the bottom one, and this one we're pressing out, which it kind of wants to do anyway because there's so much fabric here, it's pushing it out automatically. So that's good. So these ones will go in. Let's press those. Okay, here's my top. I'm just kind of tugging at it a little bit just so it's taut. Not really pulling, but just making sure it's taut. There, we got that one side in. Let's do that other side in. And let's just get this nice and flat again too. Gonna give it one more final press on the outside just to get it all real nice. That's coming together. Look at our perfect point there. I love it. Okay. It's kind of funny, right? Because this block, let's do this similar one right away. This block is called point taken, right? And the whole idea is like, hey, your points don't have to be all perfect. We chopped them off. Like there's no points on the edges. But that is like totally misleading because this block is all about perfect points. It's all those center areas, all these nesting of the seams. So it is completely about having perfect points, not the idea of like, oh, you don't have to worry about points at all. I took the points off. Point taken, you know? So a little kind of goofy, right? Okay, so these seams are pointed inward. We are good there. And now these ones, these two point outward. So I guess we got to kind of start in the middle and push outward. And then we'll make sure that that middle seam is flat again too. Okay, and then this one's pushed outward as well. Get this middle, here's that part that we folded over. I'm just leaving that. All right, we should be good to go. But yeah, that's why, I mean, this block is tricky. It looks like a fun, nice block. Look at the front again here. But yeah, I know a lot of people are having trouble with it, and it really is a precision block with a ton of small pieces. That's why I'm getting way into the precision bits about it today. Just to show you, if you're having troubles, some tricks to get over those troubles. Normally, like I said, I don't get so fussy. Oh my God, it's looking cute. Look at this little area. So now we can see all those points pretty well. All right, now let's fold this guy over. So a few things again, we have to worry about matching this point, kind of how we did here and here. So normally I would sew the smaller piece on first like this, but I'm going to flip it around because I want to see that triangle. I want to sew right near that triangle so I can get that good point. So let's put these pieces together. So you can see our seam allowances are in opposite directions, so I should be able to butt them up. I can physically feel them. When the block gets bigger like this, it doesn't hurt to throw a wonder clip on all the parts of it. I could just sew it. I can feel it when it butts together, but since we're a little farther apart than we were before, let's throw a couple more wonder clips in there. Get two more. I'm not sure I put wonder clips in my list of links here. I'll try and remember on the YouTube to get it up there because I love these mini wonder clips so much. All right, so now here's where we're not nesting seams. Those are the two seams that are pressed open, so I'm just going to try and visually kind of match those as well as I can. Throw another clip in there. And then now these ones are nested again, so I should just feel that bump. There we go. And I'll check on that later too, but we'll throw a clip on there yet. All right, so now we're ready to sew that together. And again, I'm gonna have this piece on the top so I can aim for that little corner. Precision today. Okay. We are almost done, you guys, though. So what has it been? It's been a good 2.5 hours that we've been at this. So this is, you know, it's a fussy block. But hey, it's still all of our other blocks that we're doing all that hand stitching and stuff. Those are going to take well over 2.5 hours. So this is not too shabby. So I'm taking it off. I'm feeling for that bump. If it's still together, and it still is, I'm just going to throw my stiletto there, kind of act as a pin. All right, that's our first point. Here's our second point of note, and it's that where the flat seams, the open seams are together, and we're aiming for that point in that triangle again. All right, here we go. All right, I think we're there. And now the next bit, again, feeling if these seams are together, and I think they are pretty good. I always kind of stop once I have the needle in the seam. It's kind of like a pin, and then I readjust because like this is way off. Let's just try and adjust this a little bit. There we go. Okay, now we need to, I keep losing my leaders. I think they're just falling back here. There we go. We need to get it off. I can't chain piece this because we only have that one piece left. So we gotta take it off and check it out. But let's see how we did. Let's peek how we did. All right. Test number 1. That looks perfect. So that's that nested seam again. That lines up perfectly, this seam to this seam. Awesome. Check. All right, this one, pretty good. We did not clip that corner. Our seam's not matched up perfectly if you're getting like real picky and want to like assess things. So this seam here is not perfectly aligned with this seam. That was that seam that wasn't nested. That was the open seam, but you're never, ever gonna notice that. But you know, just if we're looking at precision so we can be better in the future, right? So this one ended up just perfect as well. And we did not clip that point. We still got that full point there, which is great. So very, very happy with that. Again, I will probably never be this precise again in one of these blocks. But hey, we're hitting all the marks in this one. So all right, make sure you always check. You don't want to accidentally do it that way, even though that would look kind of fun. But nope, we're going here. Flip it around, and again, I'm going to go from this big side just so I can see this, get that corner. So let's start in the middle there. I'm going to match up those halvesy seams, or not halvesies, the pressed open. Kind of nudge that around. Clip that, and then we'll nest these seams together. Just butt them up. And since it worked so well with the clip last time, let's get a clip in there. Same here. I'm gonna feel that bump like that, and get the seam and get the clip in there. All right. Last row to stitch, and then we will press this open and call it a day. Okay, here's our first, turn it on. Again, I'm doing that back with a big piece on top, just so I can get that, find that little triangle later. All right, that's our first nested seam. I'm stopping in that nested seam, and we'll this next one off. All right, aiming for that triangle point again. All right, I think I'm in there. All right, and then getting this last point, I'm gonna just feel, this one looks a little, oh wow, look, I'm glad I stopped here. Look, I folded over that edge. Hoo-wee, man, that would have been not fun. Glad I checked. It felt a little goofy. I almost would have clipped that in there. So there, now we're flat on there again. I can feel that seam. And I think we're good now. Oh gosh, I'm glad we didn't do that right at the end. That would have been annoying, right? Okay, and that is it. Let's see how we did, and then let's press this guy open. I'm just glancing at the pressing bit. It looks like we press outward. Okay, let's take a look. All right, let's do our little test. How are we on this side? Ooh, a little off there. Not exactly lined up, but oh well. How are we in the middle? Middle, not too bad. Did not lose our point. That's looking pretty snazzy. And this guy, this one's matched pretty dang perfect. So awesome. So now all we have to do is press outward, and we are done. And I want to just double check to see how close to that 6.5 inches. So this is supposed to be a 6.5 inch block, right? But when we measured the inside, we were a little too small, which makes me think that my scant 1/4 inch is too big yet. I need to make my seam allowance even smaller, a hair smaller than that 1/4 inch. so we're not so off next time. But let's see, I think we can kind of stretch this seam a little, like really get it flat, and I think that might help us get to that 6.5 inch mark. But look, it is looking so freaking adorable, and we officially have another block done. So I think I have half of the blocks done now and half of the blocks incomplete. So I'm on 50% right now. But all right, let's take a look. Here we are, final block. I think it is totally adorable. This is our first block that I've added a pop of color in, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm trying to have it be kind of a blonde quilt with mostly these whites and tans and yellows, but every once in a while I want to put a pop of color in there. Let's give it a little test. Oh, check it out. Even though the middle was a little small, we are pretty freaking good looking at that 6.5 inch. Look, it looks totally on point. Look, I mean, we're a little shy, but dang, we made that 6.5 inch. I was totally worried about that, but we're totally there. Here, I'll show you on the, I can lift it up a little bit better on this guy. But that turned out so much better than I thought. I thought we were going to be way skinny, but no, we are right on. So look, that precision pays off. It's pretty futzy, but we got right on our 6.5 inch mark. So again, if your block is too small, you probably need to make your quarter inch seam allowance a little skinnier. If your block is too big, like if it's 7 inches, then you need to fatten up your seam allowance. But yeah, it totally worked itself out exactly. So all right guys, I'm going to flip you around and we're going to call it a morning finished, a check mark off of our list here. Yay, hello! Yeah, it's sunny behind me today here. But yeah, so all done. It is adorable. I love it. And that little pop of color. Hooey, but man, so much more. If you want to get exact and stuff, there's a lot more precision in this block than you'd think just looking at it, right? So I mean, if you want some tips and tricks to get just like all those little perfection things going, if you're struggling with different little bits, this will go on YouTube at Penguin and Fish Movies. Feel free to check it out again if you're like, oh, how did we get those points to match up? Or wasn't I supposed to be aiming for that little corner for some reason? Go check it out again there, because this is probably the most precise block I'm going to do. I do not know if I'm going to get this fussy with the other blocks from the Splendid Sampler here, though. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. I'll get that up on YouTube, and I will see you again on Monday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Have a fabulous rest of your weekend. Good afternoon. Bye.